Marietta had always believed her life was simple. Quiet mornings, predictable routines, and a marriage that had lasted longer than most people could imagine. 50 years with Patrick had taught her to value silence, patience, and the comfort of familiarity. But ever since he passed away a few days ago, the silence inside her house had turned into something else. Something heavy, something unsettling. That afternoon, while the winter sun dipped behind the old maple tree outside her porch, Marietta heard the faint thud of mail being dropped into the box. She wasn't expecting anything important, but habit pushed her to step outside. A cold breeze brushed against her face as she reached into the mailbox. Among the usual envelopes, one stood out immediately. A thick white envelope with a single line written across it in neat handwriting. From Patrick. To Marietta. Her breath caught in her throat. For a moment she simply stared at the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly. A chill crawled up her spine. Patrick was gone. She'd watched the casket lower into the ground. She'd held his belongings. So how could a letter arrive now? Inside the living room, she sat on the couch and carefully opened the envelope. The moment her eyes fell on the writing inside, her heart twisted. It was Patrick's handwriting. Smooth, familiar, undeniable. The letter began. Marietta, if you're reading this, it means time has finally run out, and you must now know the truth I could never tell you in life. Her chest tightened. The truth? What truth? As she continued reading, the room around her seemed to fade away. Patrick spoke of things she had never imagined. Hidden decisions, parts of his past he had never shared, responsibilities he had carried alone, and secrets he believed would only harm her if revealed earlier. He apologized. Not vaguely but deeply. For what exactly she couldn't yet understand. When she finished the letter, her hands were cold, and an uneasy pressure filled her lungs. She had questions, more questions than she had ever asked in her entire marriage. Before she could process anything, a soft knock echoed through the house. Marietta flinched. She rarely had visitors. When she opened the door, a man stood on the porch, a stranger dressed in a gray sweater and dark coat, his expression serious but calm. "Are you Marietta?" he asked politely. "Yes, I am. Who are you?" "My name is Daniel," he said. "I'm here because of Patrick. I think we need to talk." The name meant nothing to her. She'd never heard Patrick mention a Daniel. Not once. She hesitated, but something in Daniel's eyes seemed earnest, almost burdened. He reached into his bag and pulled out a brown folder. "This belongs to you," he said quietly. Marietta took the folder with cautious hands and opened it. Inside were documents she had never seen before. Property papers, bank statements, old photographs, signatures, all connected to Patrick. Her stomach knotted. "What is all this?" she whispered. Daniel looked around the room as if choosing his words carefully. "Your husband didn't tell you everything," he said. "Some of his choices had consequences. And now that he's gone, those consequences are coming to you." Marietta felt faint for a moment. Patrick had never kept secrets from her, or so she believed. They shared every decision, every struggle. So why would he hide something this significant? Daniel placed another sealed envelope on the table. "This is only the beginning," he said. "Patrick left you something very valuable. But with value comes danger." The weight of those words pressed against her chest. "What do you mean?" Marietta asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What did he leave behind?" Daniel held her gaze, his expression grave. "The truth," he said. "A truth that could change everything." As his words settled into the air, the house seemed to grow colder. The letter on the table felt heavier than paper, heavier than ink. It felt like a doorway, one that Patrick had unlocked from the grave. And now Marietta had no choice but to step through it. Marietta stood frozen, staring at Daniel as if he had spoken in another language. The truth? What truth could Patrick possibly have hidden that required strangers to show up at her door after his death? She motioned for Daniel to sit, though her own legs felt unsteady. He took a seat across from her, placing the folder on the table like it carried the weight of a lifetime. Marietta swallowed hard. Before you say anything else, she whispered, tell me who you were to my husband. Daniel exhaled slowly, rubbing his palms together as if warming them from an invisible cold. I worked with him, he said. Not in a traditional sense. It was complicated. Patrick was involved in things, business matters that weren't on the surface. And he kept it that way to protect you. Her heart thudded painfully. Protect me from what? Daniel didn't answer right away. Instead, he slid one of the documents toward her. It was an old photograph. Patrick standing beside a man Marietta didn't recognize. Both looked younger, sharper, and oddly tense. Behind them was a warehouse, its metal walls rusted. This was taken 28 years ago, Daniel said. Patrick and I were investigating something at that time. Investigating? Her voice broke. He wasn't a detective. He worked at the university. That's what you knew, Daniel replied gently. But Patrick had another role, one he kept entirely separate from his public life. Marietta felt a sudden dizziness creep up her spine. Memories of quiet nights, Patrick coming home later than usual, the tired look in his eyes. She had always assumed it was work or stress or just age. But what if it wasn't? What exactly was he doing? She asked, gripping the arms of her chair. Daniel rested his elbows on his knees, leaning forward. Patrick helped expose financial crimes, fraud, illegal dealings. He wasn't officially part of law enforcement, but he collaborated with people who were. He gathered evidence, connected dots. He was good at finding things others missed. That photograph was from one of those cases. Marietta stared at the young Patrick in the picture. Strong, focused, hiding a world she never even glimpsed. She whispered, why didn't he tell me? Because some of the people he exposed never forgot. A chill pressed against her chest. What are you saying? That someone might come after me. Daniel didn't answer immediately, and his silence was louder than any words. He reached into the folder again and pulled out another set of documents, these ones newer. Bank transfers, coded receipts, a handwritten note from Patrick that was clearly never meant for her eyes while he was alive. We found this among Patrick's things after he passed, Daniel said. He trusted only a few of us to safeguard what he uncovered. There's evidence in here, evidence people would do anything to destroy. Evidence of what? Marietta asked. Daniel's jaw tightened. Misconduct, embezzlement, illegal operations tied to influential names. Patrick got involved because he believed people deserved the truth. But the truth has enemies. The room felt smaller, the air thick. Marietta pressed a trembling hand against her forehead. So, all this time I lived beside a man who was risking his life? He tried to shield you from it, Daniel said softly. In the end, he still is. Marietta looked at the sealed envelope Daniel had placed on the table earlier. What's inside that? He hesitated. That letter is meant for you alone. Patrick wrote it shortly before he died. It will explain more than I can. Her pulse quickened. She reached for the envelope, her fingers brushing against the rough paper. Something about it felt alive, like it carried a heartbeat of its own. But before she opened it, she looked up at Daniel again. Why bring this to me now? Why not let it end with Patrick? Daniel's expression darkened slightly. Because it didn't end with him, he said. Whoever was involved back then, they've resurfaced. And Patrick's death wasn't just the end of a chapter. It was the beginning of a fallout. Marietta's breath hitched. Are you telling me he didn't die naturally? Daniel's silence was enough. Her world, once stable and familiar, now felt like a glass floor cracking beneath her feet. Outside, a car passed slowly down the street, too slowly. Marietta's eyes drifted to the window instinctively. Daniel noticed. You're not safe on your own, he said quietly. And you're not imagining that feeling. Patrick knew this day would come. That's why he left the truth with you. Her heart pounded. She finally picked up the sealed envelope and held it against her chest. Whatever was inside, whatever Patrick wanted her to know, it was going to change everything. For a long moment, Marietta just sat there, the sealed envelope trembling in her hand. Patrick's handwriting, those familiar loops and slanted letters, stared back at her like a whisper from another world. She had shared a lifetime with him, yet she suddenly felt as if she had known only a small corner of the man he truly was. Daniel watched her with quiet patience. "You can open it when you're ready," he said softly. Marietta nodded, though her throat felt tight. She slid her finger beneath the seal. A faint tearing sound broke the silence, sharp and painful. Inside was a folded sheet of thick paper, Patrick's favorite stationery, the kind he used for important letters. She unfolded it slowly. The opening line pierced her heart. "My dear Marietta, if this letter finds you, it means the world I tried so hard to protect you from has finally reached your doorstep." Her breath shuddered. Patrick wrote about things she had never imagined, about the double life he'd been forced to live, the pressures he had faced, the people who had tried to silence him. He explained how he became involved not by choice, but because he had uncovered something accidentally. Something dangerous, something that powerful people wanted buried. "I stayed quiet to keep you safe," he wrote. "And I fear I may not have stayed quiet enough." Marietta's eyes burned as she read further. Patrick had sensed trouble resurfacing in the months before his death. He knew someone had found out he still possessed records. Records implicating individuals who had built entire careers on deception and stolen money. "I hid everything where only you can find it," he wrote, "because I trust you more than anyone left in this world." Her hands went numb. Why her? Why leave her with this impossible burden? At the bottom of the letter was a line that made her blood run cold. "If something happens to me, it will not be natural." She stared at the words, unable to read them a second time. Daniel noticed her shock and leaned forward. "Marietta, what does it say?" She handed him the letter with unsteady fingers. Daniel read it silently, his face tightening with each line. When he finished, he folded it carefully and placed it back onto the table. "This confirms what we suspected," he said quietly. "Patrick's death wasn't random. Someone wanted him gone." Marietta pressed a trembling hand against her mouth. The room spun. She felt as though her entire life had been rewritten without her permission. "Why didn't he tell me?" she whispered. "I was his wife. I deserved to know." Daniel shook his head gently. He didn't want you living in fear. He knew the risks he was taking, and he didn't want those risks to become yours. "But now they are," she said, her voice cracking. "Now I'm in the middle of it." Daniel didn't deny it. Instead, he opened the folder again and pulled out a hand-drawn map, Patrick's handwriting clearly visible on its edges. A location was circled in red. "This is what he left behind," Daniel said. Patrick hid something crucial. These documents all pointed to one last piece of evidence he never turned in. Marietta stared at the map. The circled spot was far from town, deep into an area she barely recognized. Forest. Old trails. Abandoned land. "Patrick marked this," Daniel continued. "And based on what he wrote in your letter, this is where he stored whatever those people were after." A cold shiver crawled up her spine. "So, he wants me to go there?" "Not alone," Daniel replied. "If what he hid is as important as he implied, then others may already be searching for it." Marietta's mind raced. Everything felt unreal, like she had stepped into someone else's nightmare. But the map was real. Patrick's handwriting was real. The look in Daniel's eyes was real. "Do you think I should go?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. "I think you deserve answers, and Patrick wanted you to have them. But you need to understand, this could be dangerous." She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the weight of everything settle. Then she opened them, steady and determined. "All my life Patrick made the hard choices for us," she said. "But this is the last thing he ever asked of me. I can't walk away from it." Daniel nodded, admiring the resolve in her voice. "Then we go together. First thing in the morning." Marietta looked down at the letter again. The words seemed to pulse with meaning. Tomorrow she would follow the map. Tomorrow she would uncover the secret Patrick died protecting. Tomorrow the truth would begin. The next morning arrived with a gray, muted sky, One of those mornings where the world feels quieter than usual, as if holding its breath. Marietta barely slept. Patrick's letter, Daniel's warning, the map. It all replayed in her mind like a storm she couldn't outrun. She stood by the window, clutching a warm cup of tea, watching fog curl across the yard. Every shadow seemed sharper. Every sound felt louder. It was strange. After 50 peaceful years, today was the first day she woke up afraid. At exactly 8 a.m., Daniel's car pulled into her driveway. A black sedan. Clean. Unmarked. Marietta stepped outside, pulling her coat tighter against the cold, and slid into the passenger seat. "You okay?" Daniel asked gently. "No," she admitted. "But I'm ready." He nodded once and began driving. The roads were quiet, the kind of silence that made her heart beat louder than usual. After a few minutes, Marietta broke the silence. "Daniel, those people you mentioned, the ones Patrick was up against, do you really think they're still watching?" Daniel tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "Not watching," he said. "Hunting. Patrick had information worth millions. Maybe more. People kill for a lot less." A chill rippled through her. "Then why bring me along?" she whispered. "Because Patrick trusted you with the truth. And whatever he left behind, whatever that evidence is, it belongs to his wife." Marietta looked down at the folded map in her lap. Patrick's familiar handwriting felt like a lifeline. She traced her finger over the red circle he'd drawn. The car eventually left the paved road and entered a long stretch of forest. Tall trees pressed in from both sides. The deeper they went, the more isolated it felt. After 20 minutes, Daniel parked beside an overgrown trail. "This is as far as we can drive," he said. "The rest we walk." Marietta nodded, though her insides trembled. She followed Daniel down the narrow trail. Fallen leaves crunched beneath their feet. The forest felt endless, ancient, like it had been waiting for them. "Patrick came here," she murmured. Daniel nodded slightly. "He must have. He chose this place carefully. Somewhere no one would think to look." They walked for several minutes in silence until the trail opened into a clearing. In the center stood an old shed. Weather-beaten wood, a rusted metal roof, vines crawling up its walls. It looked abandoned for decades. "This is it," Daniel said quietly. Marietta stepped forward, her heart pounding. The shed felt eerily still, as if the air around it held secrets too heavy to speak. Daniel tried the door. It didn't budge. "Locked. Patrick didn't want anyone wandering in," he muttered. He pulled a small metal tool from his pocket and worked the lock. Within seconds it clicked open. The door creaked as it swung inward. The inside was dark except for a thin beam of sunlight that seeped through cracks in the walls. Dust particles floated in the air. Shelves lined the walls, covered in old jars, tools, and forgotten objects. Marietta stepped inside carefully. "What exactly are we looking for?" she asked. Daniel held up the map. "According to Patrick's markings, something hidden beneath the floorboards." They scanned the wooden planks. At first everything looked the same, until Marietta noticed a small metal ring protruding from one board near the back corner. "What's that?" she asked, pointing. Daniel knelt and pulled the ring. A wooden panel lifted, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a metal lockbox, heavy and covered in dust. Marietta's breath caught. Daniel lifted it out carefully and set it on the floor. He tried opening it, but it was sealed with a combination lock. "Patrick didn't give me the code," Daniel muttered. Marietta suddenly remembered the letter she had read last night. One line had stood out. She hadn't understood it then, but now it echoed clearly. "You already know the numbers that matter." Her heart thumped. There were only 3 numbers that held true meaning in their marriage. Their wedding anniversary, the day Patrick proposed, and the date of their son's birth. She tried the anniversary first. The lock clicked open. Her knees weakened. Daniel opened the box slowly. Inside were several thick envelopes, a small flash drive, a stack of signed documents, and a single photograph. Patrick standing beside a man Marietta had never seen. Only this time the man's face was slashed out with a black marker. Daniel's face drained of color. "Oh no," he whispered. Not him. Marietta felt fear twist inside her chest. Daniel, who is that? Daniel swallowed hard, unable to tear his eyes from the picture. That man, he said, voice shaking, is the one Patrick feared most. Daniel stared at the photograph for several long seconds as if trying to confirm it wasn't real. His jaw tightened, a muscle in his cheek twitching, not from surprise but from recognition. Marietta felt her stomach twist. Daniel, who is he? Daniel exhaled slowly. His name isn't important. What matters is that this man is dangerous. Very dangerous. He glanced at her. Patrick wasn't exaggerating. He wasn't paranoid. He was running from someone real. Marietta stared at the slashed-out face on the photograph. The black marker streaks cut across the man's features, but the parts that remained visible were enough sharp eyes, clean-cut hair, the kind of expression that looked both calm and calculating. A man who didn't need to shout to be feared. She felt a cold shiver crawl across her spine. Daniel lifted the envelopes next. Each was thick, sealed, and labeled in Patrick's handwriting. Evidence keep safe. Names and accounts. For Marietta, if anything happens. Her throat tightened when she read that last one. Daniel carefully unfolded the signed documents at the bottom of the box. His eyes widened. This is bigger than I thought, he muttered. These are statements, whistleblower reports, and bank transfers. Illegal ones. Millions of dollars. He looked up at her. Patrick didn't just find corruption. He uncovered an entire network. Marietta closed her eyes in pain. Oh, Patrick, what did you get yourself into? Then Daniel picked up the flash drive. A simple black USB stick. No labels. No markings. But the weight of it felt heavy, like it could topple kingdoms. This, Daniel said quietly, might be the reason he died. Marietta wrapped her arms around herself. For the first time, she realized something she had been avoiding. Her husband didn't just leave her clues. He left her a burden, something dangerous enough to kill for. Let's get out of here, she whispered. Please. Daniel nodded, closing the lockbox and tucking it under his arm. Yeah, we shouldn't stay in one place too long. They stepped out of the shed into the cool forest air. The stillness felt heavier now, almost threatening. Daniel relocked the shed door, erasing any sign they had been there. As they walked back toward the car, Marietta felt the weight of every crunching leaf, every rustling tree. Halfway back, Daniel suddenly stopped. Did you hear that? He whispered. Marietta froze. At first she heard nothing, just silence. Then a faint crack of a twig. Not theirs. Daniel's eyes darted toward the trees. Someone's here. Her heart slammed against her ribs. He whispered sharply. Move. Quietly. They quickened their pace, the path stretching ahead like a lifeline. Marietta resisted the urge to look behind her, but every instinct screamed that eyes were watching them. Finally, the car came into view at the bottom of the hill. Get in, Daniel ordered quietly. Marietta scrambled inside. Daniel threw the lockbox into the back seat, jumped into the driver's side and started the engine. The tires spun against the dirt road before gaining traction. Just as they sped off, Marietta looked out the rear window. For a split second, just long enough to confirm her fear, she saw a figure standing between the trees. Tall. Still. Watching. Daniel, she whispered shakily. We're not alone. I know, he said, voice low. But they didn't follow us. Not yet. Marietta clutched the sides of her seat, breath trembling. Where do we go now? She asked. We need to keep moving, Daniel replied. That flash drive needs to be opened somewhere safe, somewhere secure. And you. He paused, glancing at her with a seriousness that made her blood run cold. You can't go home. Marietta felt the ground drop beneath her. What? Why not? Because whoever was in those woods, they weren't there by accident. They were tracking you. She covered her mouth with her hand. Daniel continued. Patrick didn't leave all this to scare you. He left it because he believed you were the only person he could trust. But that means the people he exposed, they'll come for this evidence. And they'll come for you. Marietta felt her entire world collapse in a single breath. Daniel pressed harder on the gas pedal. "From this moment on," he said, "your life isn't the same." Marietta looked down at the lockbox in the back seat. The slashed photograph, the envelopes, the words for Marietta. Her husband had tried to protect her. But now she had stepped into the very fight that killed him. And whether she wanted it or not, the storm had already begun. Marietta clutched the seatbelt, her knuckles white. The forest road blurred past the windshield as Daniel drove faster, taking sharp turns and avoiding the main highways. Every sound, the crunch of gravel, the distant howl of a coyote, the whir of the tires, felt like a countdown to something she couldn't see. "I need to know," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What's on that flash drive? Why would someone kill Patrick for it?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. He kept his eyes on the road, muscles tense. Finally he spoke, voice low, almost a growl. "It's not just money, Marietta. It's not just corruption. It's names, dates, transfers, connections to people you'd never suspect. Politicians, business leaders, people with power, people who kill to keep it." Marietta shivered. Her mind raced. "So, he tried to expose them?" Daniel nodded slowly. "He did. And they found him first." Her stomach churned. She had always thought Patrick's investigations were just paperwork and secret meetings. Now she understood how deadly it had been. Every article he wrote, every email he sent could have been his last. Daniel glanced at her, his expression grim. "You need to stay focused. One mistake, one wrong move, and we could end up like him." Marietta's chest tightened. The thought of Patrick, her husband, lying dead because he refused to stay quiet, made her stomach twist. She wanted to curl into herself to hide from the truth, but the lockbox, the flash drive, the envelopes, they were all proof. Proof that she had to keep going. They reached a small, abandoned cabin by a river. Daniel parked behind a thick wall of trees and cut the engine. The silence was deafening. "Is this safe?" Marietta asked. "As safe as it gets," Daniel replied. "We'll stay here until night falls. Then we move again. We can't risk anyone following us." Marietta opened the lockbox. She carefully lifted the envelopes, tracing Patrick's handwriting with trembling fingers. She could feel his presence in every line, every note. And yet fear gripped her. Daniel pulled the flash drive from his pocket, holding it up like a weapon. "This is the key," he said. "We plug it in, we find out everything Patrick uncovered. But we have to be careful. Whoever wants it will stop at nothing to get it back." Marietta swallowed hard. "And if they find us?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then we fight. Or we run. Whatever it takes." They spent the afternoon in tense silence. Marietta tried to read the envelopes, but the legal language blurred under her fear. Her thoughts kept drifting to Patrick, his laugh, his stubbornness, the way he always thought he could protect her. And now she had to be the one who carried his legacy. As dusk fell, Daniel finally connected the flash drive to his laptop. The screen lit up, revealing folders, spreadsheets, and documents that stretched on endlessly. Names, dates, coded transactions, emails, proof of an underground network that had been running unnoticed for years. Marietta leaned closer. The magnitude of it all hit her like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just dangerous. This was explosive. "Daniel," she whispered, "if this gets out—" "I know," he said grimly. "It will change everything. That's why we have to be careful. One leak, one wrong step, and we're both targets." The night grew darker. Outside, the forest seemed alive with shadows. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a branch made Marietta flinch. She knew someone could be watching, waiting. Daniel turned to her. "Are you ready for this?" She looked at the lockbox, at the envelopes, at the flash drive. Patrick had trusted her. And now she had to trust herself. "I have to be," she said firmly. "For him." Daniel nodded. "Then we start." The storm wasn't coming, it was already here. And Marietta had no choice but to face it head-on. Night had fully descended. The cabin seemed smaller now, shadows stretching across the walls like invisible fingers. Marietta sat across from Daniel, eyes glued to the laptop screen. Every line of data felt like a ticking clock. They weren't just looking at numbers or emails. They were looking at a web of corruption that could destroy lives. Daniel's fingers flew across the keyboard, decrypting files and cross-referencing names. Marietta's hands trembled as she sorted through Patrick's notes. Every piece connected to a larger picture, each discovery more shocking than the last. They know Patrick had something, Daniel murmured. That's why he's gone. Whoever's behind this is smart, careful, ruthless. Marietta swallowed hard. Her mind replayed the images of Patrick's final moments, the way he had looked at her with a mix of fear and determination. And now she had to finish what he started. Suddenly, a noise outside made both of them freeze. A twig snapped underfoot. Daniel's hand went to the small pistol at his side. Marietta's heart pounded in her chest. "Stay calm," Daniel whispered. He moved toward the window, peeking through a crack in the blinds. Nothing. Just the shadows of trees swaying in the wind. Marietta exhaled, trying to steady herself. "We can't stay here forever," she said. "Someone will find us." Daniel nodded. "At first light we move. But tonight we prepare. We make copies of everything, encrypt what we can, and plan our next step. This isn't just about exposing them. It's about surviving long enough to do it." Hours passed. They worked in silence, the tension pressing down like a physical weight. Marietta began to feel a strange resolve. Fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She could feel Patrick's presence guiding her, reminding her of the courage he had always shown. By the time the moon was high, the last copy of the data was ready. Daniel leaned back, exhaustion written across his face. Marietta looked at him, determination in her eyes. "Tomorrow," she said firmly, "we bring this to light. No more hiding. No more running." Daniel hesitated. "Once we do, there's no turning back. They'll come after us. And it won't just be threats this time." Marietta nodded. "I know. But Patrick trusted me. I have to trust myself too." The first rays of dawn filtered through the trees. They packed up the laptop in the lockbox, ready to leave the cabin. Every step outside felt like walking into danger, but Marietta no longer flinched. She felt the weight of responsibility and the power of truth driving her forward. As they disappeared into the forest, she looked back at the cabin, a symbol of the night they had survived, and the night that had changed everything. Weeks later, after careful planning and anonymous leaks, the story Patrick had been chasing finally broke. Names that had seemed untouchable were exposed. Power and corruption trembled under the light of truth. Marietta watched it all unfold from a safe distance. She wasn't free from fear, but she was free from silence. And in that freedom she felt Patrick with her, proud and unwavering. The journey had been terrifying, and the path ahead was uncertain. But Marietta had learned something essential. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the choice to act in spite of it. And as long as she held that choice, she could face whatever came next. The storm had passed for now, but the fight for truth was far from over. And Marietta was ready.